Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition to Building Your Life podcast with John Browning. And Michael DeLon is off today. We've given him a little bit of a much-deserved break. And we have a special guest with us today. Her name is Elizabeth Otis. She and I met with in our conversations and dealings on the Speakers Network. Both of us are speakers in our own right, and it was really intriguing to get to know Elizabeth a little bit better. She deals with, and I'll let her explain this because this is way out of my realm, but she kind of deals with this brain science and neuroscience behind sort of why we do what we do and how we can maybe reprogram some of those things that may get in the way of our success, not just in overall life and building your life, but also in maybe your portfolios and your financial area of your life, which, as everyone who has listened to this podcast before knows, we're all about building a life, not just a portfolio. So Elizabeth, why don't you kind of introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go from there and get to know you a little bit, and then we'll talk about some of the things that you're really, really good at and I'm not.
All right, I love it. Well, thank you so much, John, and hello. Special shout out to everyone who's listening and watching in today. We're going to make this super valuable so that it is worth every bit of your time. So like John said, I am Elizabeth. I am a student of neuroscience, and I specialize in helping other entrepreneurs overcome any sort of external or internal resistance so that they can achieve the results we want. And so today we are going to be talking about 3 little known ways to attract more of financial abundance, to bring in more financial abundance to your life today, right now. So without further ado, John, do you want to start in with number 1? Do you want me to just go ahead and dive in?
Well, I thought it was really interesting when you explained to me kind of what number 1 is. It is very different than I would have expected. And it and like many things, when you actually look into the strategy behind, people who are successful, it's a little bit different than what we might expect. So go ahead and talk to us about the whole negativity and maybe not running away from it.
Yes. So first and foremost, as you guys know, like, we are human and life is life. So no matter what, no matter how good we are, what strategies we have, how good of a person we are and the effort we put out, we're going to experience negativity some point in our lives. And so instead of running away from it, it's actually best to leverage it, because why not leverage everything that's coming into your space? And not only is it a good idea because you're able to leverage everything that's coming into your space, but by not leveraging the negative thoughts and the negative emotions that come in, we actually block the resources, the solutions, and the ideas that are going to get us the results that we want. And so as you're going through life and you set your intentions and you're working towards them, the very first thing you want to do is just practice basic mindfulness, because if you're aware of your emotions, you can then become aware of your thoughts, which will then reveal to you the things that you're thinking to yourself that are creating your reality. Because whatever thoughts we're thinking, that's the perception we're operating from, and therefore that's the results we're going to create from. Because right now, if you were to just test it saying, where's the blue in this room, and start looking for the blue, you're going to start peeking blue, 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 blue. Or if you start saying, where's the danger in this room, how could I get hurt, you're going to start realizing that there's danger all around you, and vice versa. So it's very important that we become aware of our emotions, making sure that anytime our emotions are not in like an elevated state of being, we know that we're thinking a thought that is not going to get us the results we want. So anytime that we're aware of that thought, we want to not just ignore it and say, okay, think positive now, because the whole reason we're thinking that thought is because up until this current present moment in life, we've had the experience telling us otherwise. So if you're trying to bring more financial abundance into your life, and say you're even thinking about hiring John, right? It's like, okay, but I feel kind of irritated behind hiring John, even though like I know he's the guy, he has success, but for some reason I just feel a little irritated or like uneasy about it. So the second thing you want to do is become aware of the thoughts. Why? Well, because I haven't used a financial planner before. Maybe I have in the past and they haven't been that successful, or they haven't been giving me the help I wanted. So the next thing you want to do is you want to validate that. Don't run away from it, because if you run away from it, your body's like, okay, well, we've experienced this, so we're just going to keep bringing it up and we're going to keep creating that reality. So you actually want to validate it, being like, yes, I agree with you. Kind of like sales, right? Like if you're going to sell someone, you're not going to be like, no, no, no on their objection. You're going to agree with their objection and roll with it and use it as the reason as to why you're getting more of, why they should buy from you. So it's the same thing with your mind whenever you're having those negative thoughts and emotions. Validate that. Yes, I realize that in the past, I've hired a financial planner that wasn't the best for me. And so then you want to ask yourself a question that's going to get you the results you want, because we will get an answer to any question we ask, even if the question isn't true. Like if you have black hair right now, ask yourself, why do I have blonde hair? You're going to get an answer, even though it's not true. So it's very critical that once you validate that negative thought, that negative emotion, you ask yourself a question around moving towards the obtainment of what you want. So yes, I'm feeling irritated, even though I want to hire John. I'm just feel uneasy because the people I've hired in the past, and I have every right to feel that way. So how can I feel certain and that John's the right guy for me? Where can I find evidence that this is going to be a good match for me? So you're asking yourself questions to get you the result that you want. That's so critical, because if you don't lean into those negative thoughts, negative emotions, then you're just going to keep creating more of it. It's like unavoidable.
I love that. And it's just like I said, it's different than maybe the traditional thought process that we all tend to go through. We want to run away from that negativity, or like you said, it's if I tell you don't look for the elephant, you're going to look for the elephant. It's just what we do, right? And there've been a bunch of studies on that, right? So that
Yeah.
whole mindfulness and mindset is super important. And you're right, a lot of people on this podcast that are watching are saying to themselves, I know they are, because I've talked to several of them, and they're like, I don't know about this whole, I don't really think I either need a financial advisor, I can figure it out on my own because I'm a pretty smart person, I'm a great professional, whatever it is that I do. And they come up with all sorts of reasons, but they end up, and what they end up with is in this, what I call the dazed and confused space, because guess what? They spend most of their life being an engineer, a teacher, a plumber, a lawyer, a doctor, and they're really good at that. And they're really smart at that.
Mhm.
And if they spend as much time as at that as they would on their financial planning and their life planning, well, they could do what I do as well. But I really enjoy what I do, and I do that full time. But they get that mindset, and then they end up in either the dazed and confused space, is what I call it, or they just end up with nothing and no plan for what they want their life to be like in the future. So that's a really good one, that I really appreciate. Before we move further, I want to make sure, because I know after that one people are going to be interested. How's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch, if you don't already have Facebook, which I know it sounds weird because everyone sends people to their websites, but my YouTube channel, because that has the plethora of knowledge and science-backed YouTube videos on teaching you how to apply this knowledge. And then all my contact information is available in description below of all those videos.
Awesome. And I will tell you, I've been out, I've watched some of those videos. She really gets into the science, which is what turns me on. I was really like to know what's the science behind all this. It's not, I don't, for what my personality, the whole touchy feely thing, is tough for me. But it's just me, it's who I am. But she gets into the science of it, which I think is kind of where you're going next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just talked about how to get out of that, stage where you're cognitively aware of that. I'm not in the place I want to be. So that's the first thing you want to do, is ask yourself the right questions, validate the thoughts so you can move more in the direction you want. The second step is reprogramming your subconscious mind, because if you get anything out of this, like this video right now, it's so incredibly important for you to know that the whole reason you don't have what you want right now is because there's more pain attached to either the outcome or the getting of the outcome than there is pleasure. And pain doesn't just mean like straight up pain, like agony. It also means unfamiliar. And it's not cognitively aware, it's subliminally. So roughly 90% of our behavior is shaped by our subconscious mind. So this is why it doesn't matter how hard you work, who you know, what strategy you have, or anything like that, if your programming is not in alignment. That's why even though John is here right now, like he has the best services for you guys and he's ready to serve, why you could still not be pulling the trigger, because somewhere subliminally, there's a belief that once I achieve this, there's going to be more pain, or just simply the unknown, because your body hasn't been conditioned yet to know what that's like, that's scary. It's anything unfamiliar equals death to the subconscious mind. So cognitively, you could be like, oh, I know I'm going to get this outcome, but to your subconscious mind, like it's just like it's death, right? And so it's always going to avoid. And so one thing that you can do, and there's many of different ways that you can reprogram your subconscious mind. So definitely hop back over to the YouTube channel to look at all the different ways that you can do this today. But knowing that whenever there's more pleasure attached to the outcome and the getting of the outcome than there is pain, you actually can't help but to bring in more financial abundance. It's just like breathing, right? Like breathing is a part of that 90%. There's more pleasure attached than pain. So you can't help but to not breathe. And when you try to stop breathing, you face a lot of resistance and it's really hard for you not to breathe. So it's literally the same thing for anything in life. Like that's why you always hear people referring to that like financial thermometer when it comes to maintaining a certain level of income. It's that was what they're referring to.
Yeah, I like that. And your YouTube channel is it Elizabeth Otis? Just type in Elizabeth Otis, right? That's how to get to your YouTube. Super simple, right?
Yes.
So, and everybody here, if you're familiar with the podcast, unless this is your first time, you can reach me at guardianrockwealth.com. And of course we have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, and we have YouTube as well. But on our website, there's all kinds of free materials, resources for you to use and get kind of used to what it is that we do. And like I said, free stuff too, so that you can like run some calculators and get to know us a little bit better that way. So please reach out. There's also the big contact us, and you can reach out on that. We'll be happy to send you a free book, Build a Life, not a portfolio, if you do reach out to us. And also 312-372-5000 will get you directly into our office also. Now, there's another section that we don't want to miss, Elizabeth, and this may be kind of the capstone of kind of what makes all that you just talked about work. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So first of all, those freebies sound excellent. So definitely go ahead and grab your guys' self a copy of that. I know I'm going to refer over to it as well, just to check you out even more. But going into elaborating off of all of what we just said and using science to back this, because this last part may sound a little woo, right? But going back to what John said, everything we're talking about today is here backed in science. And so if we were to look at ourselves, right? Like we're just a bunch of atoms if we were to break it down super simple. But what does an atom break down to, right? Like what's even simpler than atom? An atom is 99% empty space. Like we're basically all energy. Energy just is, right? And so yes, like there could be the programming aspect, but what even comes before the programming? It's the energy that fuels the programming. And so there is this technique called tapping, that whenever you do the tapping on your body, which I have a video over on my YouTube showing you in detail how to do so, you actually unclog what you would like to visualize as pipes that flow the financial abundance to you. Because I know some of you guys may on here have heard of chakras before, meridians. Just know that we have major energy centers that make up our human, and each energy center is in relation to the type of energy it brings in. So there's chakra energy center in relation to the financial abundance we bring. And what allows that energy to flow to that energy center are the meridians, the quote unquote tubes. And so when it comes to tapping, we want to know that not only because we are basically energy, that we have these energy centers, right? Like I said, this might sound a little woo, but going back to scientifically speaking and keeping it simple, we have energy centers, right? And in order to flow any type of energy to us, it has to flow through what's called a meridian. And when our meridians get clogged through just fears, traumas, any sort of reason why your meridian might get clogged, it doesn't allow the energy, the financial energy, to flow down to your energy center so that you can actually experience that in your reality. And so what tapping does is it essentially unclogs this pipe so that financial energy can literally flow through your body and that you can now start experiencing it. This is a huge reason as to why, because we're just energy bodies, right? Like even money is energy. And so if our energy is not in alignment, in addition to our programming, no matter how much we're flowing the water to, it's clogged and it can't get through. And so I have a free video over on YouTube that you guys can check out on tapping to get the science behind why that works, and an exercise on to actually do so.
I'm totally writing that down because I haven't seen that one. Okay, I'm gonna write that down here. So everybody write that down. It's a video on tapping on Elizabeth Otis. Search YouTube, find her, and it's some pretty cool stuff about, we talk a lot on this podcast about, the nuts and bolts and how you want to have your estate plan right and all this other, sometimes it can be kind of boring. We try and not make it boring here on our podcast, but this is something entirely new, but not really, because we do talk about the importance of building your life, not just your portfolio. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is how to unlock the things that might be holding you back, unclog that meridian, right? You referred to it as a meridian. Is it kind of like a gateway?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, kind of like the gateway into your best life. What are those gateways and how do you unclog those and stop blocking what is supposed to be your best life? There's a lot out there, and sometimes we get everything right here, right? What's right in front of our nose and what's way back in the past is what I found too. So I always talk to people about where those strange things that we've been taught. Has anybody on this podcast ever been taught something really strange that you still do as an adult? Have you ever done that, Elizabeth? I realized that later. With me, it was bread bags. Okay. So the bread bags that you get the bread, you go to the grocery store, you get the bread, and you finish the bread and you throw the bread bag away. Not in our house when I was a kid. Okay, my mom, she took that bread bag, she washed it out, she hung it up. You should not, and if we got caught throwing away a bread bag before we had used it at least 3 or 4 times, we were in big trouble as the kids, right? And then when I just thought that was just sort of how things were done until I got married. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm washing out the bread bag. Doesn't everybody do that?" She's like, "No." And it's just, but that came from my mindset back here. It's a little strange, but in our throwaway society, we just throw away the bread bag, right? Maybe that's not environmentally correct. So apologize for the ESG folks out there. But generally speaking, I no longer wash out my bread bags. But that also came from her mindset, because her mother grew up during the Great Recession, and you saved every single thing that you possibly could. So I understand where that comes from, but until I got to that interrupt and unclog this, that hey, life might be actually a little bit easier if I didn't wash out every bread bag I ran across, right? Probably get more done. But things like that. So it is interesting what causes us not to experience our best life or even plan for it. And I think you've really helped us out today. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. And again, everybody knows, first of all, this is not financial advice. But if you do want financial advice, you know how to get in touch with me at guardianrockwealth.com. And if you need some help that's really interested you go to Elizabeth Otis, look her up on YouTube, and you'll be able to have all sorts of different ways to contact her then and look at some of her stuff. It's free. It's right there on YouTube, and you can learn a lot about the science behind the brain science, the neuroscience behind sort of why we do what we do and why we don't do what maybe we could do, right? All right. Well, thanks so much. And we will, Elizabeth, you and I are going to talk more in the future. Maybe we'll have you on here again and do a different topic or something like that. So thanks so much for being on the podcast with me.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me, John.
Sure thing. All right, we'll see everyone next week.